Well, hello, folks, and welcome to the Applegate River Strategic Implementation Area Virtual Open House. Normally, we would have liked to have had this in person. We had the Applegate Library booked, but then COVID happened, and then we've had some wildfires, and so it's been a really tough year, and I hope everyone's doing okay out there. But thanks again for joining in. My name is Ryan Byer, and I work for the Oregon Department of Agriculture, and we're here to talk to you about um, what the Department of Agriculture is doing around the state, what we're doing for you, what's a strategic implementation area, and that's kind of a mouthful. So moving forward, we're just going to say SIA. So you're inside of an SIA, your property is inside of an SIA, and what that means for you, and some of the special opportunities there for you. And then lastly, we're going to give our partners, your local partners, your neighbors, a chance to talk about their organizations and their groups and what they can do for you, some of the opportunities there. And they're located in Williams and in Grants Pass and in Jackson County and Josephine County. And I'm up here at the Capitol in Salem, and so those are your local partners, and so we'll hear from them. And then mainly, we're just here to talk about the Department of Agriculture, the SIAs, and what we can do for you on your agricultural property. So thanks again, everybody. And next, we'll hand it over to Brenda Sanchez to talk to you about the Department of Agricultural Water Quality Program. Thanks.
Welcome, and thank you for attending the Applegate River Strategic Implementation Area Open House. My name is Brenda Sanchez. I'm a Water Quality Specialist for the Oregon Department of Agriculture and ODA's statewide lead for the Strategic Implementation Area Initiative. I'm disappointed that I could not meet you in person tonight, but due to the COVID-19 restrictions for gatherings, we were unable to have an in-person open house. I know this is not optimal, but we are grateful for your attendance tonight, and I want to thank you. Thank you very much. We are recording this meeting, and it will be made available on the Jackson Soil and Water Conservation District website for those that were unable to attend this evening. Also, please note that I will refer to strategic implementation areas with the acronym SIAs. And with that, I will get started. Oregon's Clean Water Mission started with the Clean Water Act to protect drinking water. The federal government delegated water quality management to the states, and as a result, Oregon divided the responsibility. For example, the Oregon Department of Forestry regulates water pollution from forestry. Oregon Department of Agriculture regulates water pollution from agricultural activities, and Oregon's Department of Environmental Quality regulates city stormwater. Today, there are water quality programs around the state working toward protecting water quality for all the values of Oregon's residents care about, such as drinking water, recreation, fishing, and hunting. Additionally, the agricultural community values clean water for irrigation, livestock watering, and for the production of agricultural goods. ODA's water quality program began just over 20 years ago. The agricultural community felt it was best to manage water quality at the local level, so ODA created 38 agricultural water quality management areas around the state based on watershed boundaries, agriculture, and climate. The map shows in blue the boundaries of each of the agricultural water quality management areas. The Applegate River SIA is located in the Inland Rogue Management Area down here in Southwest Oregon, outlined in blue. Local advisory committees were formed for each management area, and each LAC is composed of local agricultural landowners representing local ag commodities and other individuals such as maybe a county water quality specialist. Soon after, area plans and area rules were developed for each management area, for which I will discuss in the upcoming slides further. ODA works with soil and water conservation districts to implement the area plans. They are the local expert and are non-regulatory. They can provide technical assistance and conservation planning to landowners. As I mentioned earlier, there were area rules written for each management area. Each management area has its own set of rules and vary for each management area. But in general, there are 2 area rules common to all 38 management areas. The first is the waste rule, which basically states that agricultural landowners must comply by not polluting ground or surface water, discharging waste into waters of the state, or placing any waste in a location where they are likely to enter waters of the state. Wastes include excess soil, manure, fertilizer, or other substances that can pollute water. And waters of the state can include ponds, groundwaters, canals, ditches, and rivers. The second area rule is the Streamside Vegetation rule. At a minimum, all agricultural landowners must comply with the Streamside Vegetation rule by allowing vegetation to establish and grow along streams that flow all year to provide shade, stabilize stream banks, and filter out pollutants from overland flows, as well as streams that flow part of the year or seasonal streams to stabilize stream banks and filter out pollutants. If you want more information about your area plan and area rules, visit ODA's water quality webpage and scroll down to the inland road. You can also contact ODA, and that information is on the webpage. Before I go further into SIAs, I wanted to just review ODA's policy. We focus on pollution prevention. We allow for flexibility so landowners so you guys can address water quality concerns. ODA promotes voluntary conservation. Compliance is only determined with the site inspection by ODA. No one else can make that determination. And I just want to affirm that compliance is the law and not voluntary. So now I'm going to go into a broad overview of strategic implementation areas. There are 4 main components to SIAs. We're looking to demonstrate AG's compliance with Oregon's agricultural water quality regulations, engage landowners in voluntary incentive-based conservation, complete monitoring to track water quality and landscape conditions, and accomplish this through collaborative partnerships to solve local water quality issues. And we're doing this in a coordinated streamside management approach. And what this means is we're working together as partners to solve these local water quality concerns. And our partners include landowners, so water conservation districts, watershed councils, local reps from state and federal agencies, tribes, and local city and county agencies. And by doing so, we can share our expertise, we can share local knowledge, we can bring our resources together, we can share data, and we can leverage funding. And we can do all of this in your watershed to achieve those common water quality objectives that we all have. Specifically, those SI objectives are to document AG's work in protecting water quality, make available additional resources for water quality improvement, promote voluntary conservation to improve wildlife and aquatic habitat, and lastly, to ensure compliance with water quality regulations. Additional resources that we bring to this SIA is technical assistance, voluntary conservation planning and project design. There is the potential for other program funding and cost share opportunities. And you can talk to your soil and water conservation district or watershed council and talk to them about these opportunities. This is a great time to take advantage of that. And lastly, we're monitoring to see the effectiveness of our program. So my last slide, I'm just going to briefly review the SIA process. These are the activities that we do in an SIA. The first thing we do is complete a local planning meeting where we bring all our partners, those ones I mentioned earlier, and we work to align programs and water quality priorities to help us optimize SIA work. Once we complete that meeting, ODA then selects the watersheds where we'll do SIA work. Once the watersheds are selected, ODA conducts an evaluation. That the evaluation has some details to it, so we're going to discuss those in some slides in the next segment. So I'll leave the details to that time. But after the evaluation, we work together with local partners, and we come up with a strategy on how we can address all of these opportunities for water quality improvement. Then ODA then conducts an open house, which is what we're doing this evening, to bring in the local community into our effort. And then we, after the open house, in about a year or so, after you have a chance to work with the Soil Water Conservation District or address these issues on your own, we will follow up with any landowners where there are water quality concerns still existing. And we do all of this just to achieve the goal of clean water. All right, on to the next session. Thank you.
So again, my name is Ryan Byer. I am the SIA Statewide Compliance Specialist, and one of my main jobs with the department is to work in these SIAs to help with the evaluations around the state and to work with landowners to try to implement projects. So I'm going to walk you through how we do these evaluations around the state. It starts out with a remote evaluation, and this is where we're taking things like Google Earth, and we're taking a look at the landscape in the SIA, and we're finding opportunities where we could improve the water quality. And so we're using stream maps and tax lot maps, but it's mainly we're just using Google Earth, publicly available. As we're doing the evaluation, these are the three things that we're looking for. These are the main contributors to pollution from agriculture. It's the manure, it's the livestock in the streams, it's the streamside vegetation. We're looking for the three main functions that Brenda mentioned earlier, where we're looking for the stream bank stability, and we need some shade there if there's flow in the summer. And we hope that there's enough vegetation there to filter any runoff, if there is runoff from coming from upstream or upland. After we do the remote evaluation with Google Earth and we found all of our opportunities to improve water quality, we have to do a field evaluation. A lot of times these aerial photos are 2 to 3 years old, and so we need the most up-to-date information. Sometimes we don't have the most up-to-date information, so we have to field verify some of our concerns. As we're doing the evaluation, these are the concern levels that we're putting our properties. I'll start at the top with the potential violation. This is where we've field verified that a property is likely not in compliance with the local rules. Again, we have to field verify that. And then we have the opportunity for improvement. This is where typically we've found an area of concern in the aerial maps in Google Earth, but we're not able to see it from the road. And so we're not actually able to field verify that concern. Or as we're doing the evaluation, the results are just inconclusive. Here, then moving down, we have the low opportunities. This is where we think that there's likely not a concern for compliance, but there's an opportunity to improve the property, improve the streamside area. And I like to use an example of, let's say you have a stream on your property and you have 10, 15 feet of blackberry on each side. Well, that may be in compliance with the rules technically, but a streamside area with native vegetation, with woody vegetation, with big root mass is much better than that blackberry. So you may be in compliance with the blackberry, but there's still room to improve that area. And then we have at the bottom our limited opportunity. This is where we think that all of the functions are being provided. We think that the property looks pretty good. So recently we did an SIA in Jackson County, just south of this SIA in the Neal Creek watershed. And these were the results of a local SIA near you. And we're finding the same thing around the state, where the majority of the properties in the SIA are low or limited, that category, and just a few are in those opportunities or those potential violations. Here's an example of that limited opportunity. This is the lowest concern level where we see agriculture on each side of this stream, but the stream has a nice wide vegetated area. There's shade being provided, bank stability, and it's able to filter any runoff that's probably coming off of those ag fields there. As we move to the low opportunity, again, we think that this property is likely in compliance, but maybe there's a blackberry or reed canary grass issue, or maybe there's some bare ground upslope. And so we could improve the vegetation to try to filter any runoff or just provide better function. But again, we don't think there's a compliance concern here, but there's an opportunity to improve the water quality functions here. Opportunity for improvement. This is where we've identified an issue and we think that it's likely out of compliance, but we typically we can't see it from the road. And so what happens with these properties that are the opportunities for improvement, our partners who you'll meet later, they're going to reach out to you. They're going to try to contact you to gauge your interest, to talk about some of the possibilities, some of the opportunities for you for your property. And so, and if our partners aren't able to reach you, then the Department of Agriculture, after a year, is going to reach out and try to just get more information. Sometimes these properties, the ownership has changed, and the previous owner ran cattle through that creek, but the new owners don't. And so we'll just try to get more information. Overall, the goal is to have everybody into that low or limited category. And here's an example of a potential violation where this is an example of a potential violation in the SIA. Here we just have our streams been ditched. We have kind of muddy, rutted nursery roads at the top of the bank. It looks like maybe some previous pesticide usage, and it's just not providing the functions that are required for this type of perennial stream. Next, we have livestock grazing right to the tops of the bank of this perennial stream, not allowing the vegetation to establish to provide the functions that we need here. And technically, this stream requires the vegetation to be there to provide some shade and bank stability and to filter any type of runoff that's coming from this calving and feeding livestock area. Another potential violation that we came across in the SIA, and this is a situation where they're actively removing the vegetation from the stream channel. And typically with a potential violation, we want to wait until after the open house, after we've had this meeting and this opportunity to meet with the landowner face to face to talk about the property. But a situation like this where they're actively removing vegetation, we're going to contact that potential violation right away. So a quick success story. At this SIA, we did an evaluation and we saw this filbert orchard where we had erosion, we had mud flowing into the creek, and the landowner came to the open house, learned about his property, learned how it was evaluated, and we got him in contact with a local partner who then they worked together and they implemented a project. On this one, he was able to get funding for cover crops and drip irrigation, which reduces erosion. And so again, this is just an example of a landowner who's identified as a potential violation, came to the open house, worked with ODA, and we got a project done. And so next, I want to send it back over to Brenda one more time to talk about what we're doing around the state to demonstrate that we are in compliance with the rules.
Okay, hello, I'm back. I'm back to share with you how we demonstrate compliance with agricultural water quality regulations. And we can do this in two ways. We can do this through monitoring water quality and landscape conditions and tracking the work done. First, I want to review monitoring. The purpose of monitoring is to measure changes in water quality resulting from improved agricultural management practices. Watershed scale monitoring is a key component to understanding how changes in agricultural practices can protect and improve water quality. Local partners will develop a monitoring project at each SIA. And once those projects are completed and data is analyzed, we will be able to determine the effectiveness of our work. The second way we can show compliance with regulations is by tracking SIA work. We just completed the 2014 to 2019 SIA Progress Report. Here is a map of where SIAs are located. The blue polygons are SIA watersheds we have been working in around the state. Through 2019, we conducted 34 SIAs with 9 more starting in 2020. So far, we've worked in 82 watersheds located in 27 counties and have partnered with 28 soil and water conservation districts. Through 2019, ODA has evaluated just over 700,000 agricultural acres and just over 2,700 agricultural stream miles. I'd like to highlight one item from the report that's interesting to share with you. Here we have a graph, and it shows that so far ODA has evaluated 11,713 tax lots. And as Ryan described earlier, our evaluation put those different tax lots into one of these 4 concern levels. On the left of the graph is our highest concern levels, and on the right is our lowest concern levels. Each bar represents how many tax lots were evaluated into each of those levels, those concern levels. And from here, you can see here on the right here that just about 96% of all the tax lots have been evaluated into the lower concerns. And then on the left, we have just about 4% of tax lots being evaluated into that higher concern level. And we've been able to move the dial in that 4% to just around 2% after ODA, soil water conservation districts, and other local partners have worked with landowners, which allows us to downgrade those tax lots into lower concern levels and increasing the lower concerns to approximately 98% of the tax lots we've evaluated. We still have many watersheds yet to evaluate, but these results have consistent around the state within each SIA and represents a solid 5 years of work. If you're interested in reading the full report, please go to ODA's Water Quality Program webpage, select Publications, and scroll down to the report. You also, in that report, is a nice background and further detail about SIA if you're interested in more information. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Brenda. Next, I want to talk about your SIA and the results of the Applegate River SIA, your SIA, and where it is and some of the issues that we are finding here. So it pretty much on the upstream side of the Applegate, it goes from the Applegate down to Murphy. It includes Caris and Slagle and Powell and Williams Creek as well. So as you know, the main agricultural commodities in your area include, dairies and cannabis and hay. There's livestock and vineyards, and our main water quality concerns is the bacteria and the nutrients and the sediment and the lack of vegetation for the temperature and the amount of oxygen in the water. So as we did our evaluation, we did our remote and field, these are the numbers that we found. And again, it's really consistent with everything else that we're seeing around the state, where the majority of the properties are in the low to limited category. And then we'll have these 30 properties as the opportunities. And we didn't have any potential violations. But so for these opportunities for improvement, over the next year, our partners will reach out to you and just have that conversation with you to gauge your interest, try to get some projects done on the ground. So what's next for the landowner is we're hoping that you'll review the packet of material that was sent to you, and then give one of us a call. Either reach out to your soil and water conservation district, one of our partners, the watershed councils, or give me a call or an email, and I'll have my contact information later on in the presentation. So again, read over the material and give me a call, or give the SWCD or our partners a call. And again, there's assistance out there available for you if you're interested. And so to get this project done, to do the outreach, to get the data, to work with our landowners, we've partnered with, in addition to our partners, Department of Fish and Wildlife and DEQ, Environmental Quality, and then also the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board. And they're one of the big funders of projects around the state. So in addition to those state agencies, we've also worked with various soil and water conservation districts and watershed councils, and those are our local partners. And so next, I'm going to have Tori Grinwald introduce the soil and water conservation districts. So go ahead, Tori.
Hi, thanks, Ryan. Hello, everyone. Like Ryan said, my name is Tori Grunwald, and I'm happy to be here with all of you and representing the Two Rivers Soil and Water District. Our district manager is Randy Tatum, and we want you to know that the district is here to help you. Our district office is located in Grants Pass and has been helping rural and agricultural landowners since 1949. To learn more about who soil and water conservation districts are and what we can do for you, I will hand it over to Randy White of the Jackson Soil and Water Conservation District.
Thank you, Tori. As she said, my name is Randy White. I'm District Manager with the Jackson Soil and Water Conservation District, and we're housed here in Central Point. And what I'd like to do is just go through kind of a short history of why and how soil and water conservation districts came to be, and then go over a few examples of things that we've actually done in two previous SIAs, and some work that Josephine or Two Rivers Soil and Water Conservation District has done to work with landowners to help them with some of their natural resource stewardship needs. And then I'd like to introduce my staff that can help everybody make these things happen on your properties, help you get these practices installed. And then I would like to turn it back over to Ryan, who I believe will introduce the third partner in this undertaking, which is Janelle Dunleavy of the Applegate Partnership and Watershed Council, and she'll visit with you again on some things that they are actually working with on landowners, just to give some examples of how and why this works and can benefit the landowners and the natural resource concerns that we have in our areas. So to start with, I think many of us kind of remember or remember hearing about anyway in the late 1920s and early 30s of a Great Depression and the struggles that our parents or our grandparents had going through those times, making it through the Depression and trying to struggle coming out of that, and to be drastically hit, Ryan, if you could go to the next slide, hit with this coming out of that depression and trying to make things work, went right into this, which many of you have heard about being called the Dust Bowl. And this was a case where a lot of the farming and ranching activities that we were doing back in those times took a lot of the vegetation off of the ground as we were disking and plowing and working up the ground. And to, of course, provide food for a nation that was just coming out of depression. There was a lot of stress put on the farmers and ranchers to produce as much as quickly as possible. It just so happened that in doing that, there were several extreme storm events that happened, and this caused what you see on the photos here, giant dust bowl. And when I say giant, I mean this actually started and went from southern Texas all the way up to the Midwestern states over to the Rockies, and even ended up on the doorsteps of our nation's capital. So it was extremely massive problem. And at that time, a gentleman by the name of Hugh Hammond Bennett was actually testifying to Congress, and he opened the shades up, and the dust came in while they were actually meeting. And so due to that, Hugh Hammond Barrett was actually one of the most renowned soil scientists, and he was in there talking to Congress about what was going on, and was able to show it firsthand. So they immediately passed legislation to put soil and water conservation policies into place. And Brian, if you go to the next slide, they kind of extended that legislation with developing a federal agency, which was known as the Soil Conservation Service up until just about probably 20 years ago, 25 years ago, somewhere in there. Their name changed to fit more about what they do, and it became the USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service, because they're doing more than just soil. They were doing water, air quality, and a lot of different things, but continue to work with farmers and ranchers. Early on into that process and having that federal agency formed, it was evident that farmers and ranchers were a little leery about working with a federal agency and allowing them onto their property. And so the president at that time talked to all the governors of all the states and asked if they would form local districts that had local people on the boards that would represent and help get them introduced to the Natural Resource Conservation Service and the many programs that they had to help them. And so that's kind of where the soil and water conservation districts came into play. And in fact, there is now about 3,000 districts throughout the country. Typically, there's at least one district in every county. In some districts, like in Josephine, there's actually 2 conservation districts, again, depending on the topography and what's happening within the individual counties. But these districts are made up of locally elected officials that are coming right from the farming and ranching industry. Even as today, many of the directors that sit on the board, most of them have to at least own or operate or manage at least 10 acres within the zones that they represent. So that means that it's basically your friends and neighbors that are on these district boards that run these districts with the help of course, the staff to help our neighbors with natural resource concerns that they may have on their property. And one of the things that I want to make very clear here as we go forward is soil and water conservation districts we do not come onto your place unless you ask us to. We will work with you. We are completely voluntary. We will not come on. We are not regulatory. So when we come onto your place, we're working with you to help you develop a plan for your place and for the natural resource concerns that you have, and hopefully turn those into opportunities for you as we actually leave and go on and work with other people. These plans and practices that have been put in place have to work for you continually. So one of the things that we try to do is make sure, go ahead and go to the next slide if you can. And I just want to show some examples of some kind of before and afters. I think they can show a lot more than me sitting here talking about things that we do. But this was an area where it was a heavy use area protection. They have horses on it. You can see on the left there what it looked like before we came in and tried to help the landowner, and then after and did some practices and put some things in place to help take care of the muddy situation, the water runoff, and things actually moving right into a little tributary of Wagner Creek here in Jackson County. And so the ecological impact is, of course, we improved water quality in Wagner Creek, and we reduced pasture and soil erosion. But we also had an impact for the landowners that it improved conditions for horse health. Their horses were a lot healthier, reduced feed costs for those horses throughout the winter months as well. in doing some of these things because they were under less stress. If you want to go on to the next one, Ryan, that would be great. Or Ryan. Excuse me. This is a fish passage one that we worked on again in that same area before and after. You can see pretty difficult for fish to make it up through, migrate up through that stream before. After we came in and made it pretty much of a natural system, and still made it so that we actually improved the irrigation management and reduced the maintenance and labor for the landowners there. So they were able to continue to do the irrigation. It was just a lot easier. They didn't have to maintain the fish passage screen and work on that before, during, and after their irrigation seasons. So that helped them quite a bit. And of course, it improved fish passage. It helped improve the juvenile survival rate during the hot months. And we actually, I think, opened up about 3 miles of spawning habitat for the fish in there. So again, kind of a win-win for the environment and a win for the landowners on that project. Okay, Ryan, I'll go to the next one. Here's another one, kind of a streamside forest restoration project. You can see how Ryan was talking earlier about the amount of weedy species that we have on our streams. Landowners can't even get down in there and enjoy their stream systems. And we've seen a lot of experience where it looks like those species are actually holding the banks, but in many cases, the ground underneath them is totally washed away, and just waiting for a major storm event that could actually wash all that away. And so came in and worked on some of the things. It looks a little rugged during the process, but you can see afterwards getting a lot of trees coming back in that will help with the shading, reduced and eliminated in most cases a lot of the weedy species that are along that stream. And basically it was awarded 123,000 plus or minus in local contracts. So it actually helped the local community with jobs in this case, and doing some economic recovery in that manner. Okay, we can go to the next. Again, here's another fish passage barrier removal and an irrigation conversion on there, and pretty much the same as what we did with some of the others. This was just another place along Wagner Creek that we were able to do this. And again, it improved water quality in Wagner Creek, improved fish passage, and in this case, we actually improved crop production and reduced maintenance labor for the landowners in this area. And it made a little bit more efficient use of irrigation water. And so it actually was a water quality or water quantity savings as well in this case. Okay, let's go to the next one. This is one that was actually done with 2 rivers on piping a leaky irrigation ditch. It eliminated a lot of sediment and reduced return flow into the Applegate River, but also helped decrease temperature in the Applegate River. It improved condition on the farmer's hay ground and increased flow for the next water user on the ditch. So again, kind of a water quantity thing as well. It actually helped the neighbors out getting the water that they needed instead of having it either evaporating or going through gopher holes, squirrel holes, cracks, and those types of things. It actually made it much better for all the people in that along that irrigation conversion or ditch. Okay, let's go to the next one. This is another one. This was actually in the Neal Creek SIA that Ryan talked about earlier. You can see that before that there was relatively large amounts of manure. Again, horse manure. This place runs about 60 horses. Excuse me. And that manure piles up, and of course they use that to sell to other people for compost and those types of things. But unfortunately, in the wintertime, when they had most of that up there, they had no access to that. So it sat there and continued to pile up, and then of course runoff is running right into Neal Creek. So we were able to come in again with one of our engineers on staff and some of our other staff members, develop a system. We did quite a few other things on there, but one of them was developing this barn, finding the funding, getting the grants to be able to do this. It was very little cost to the landowner to be able to get this done. And then they were able to store that manure underneath the building, totally eliminated any runoff, and also made it accessible all seasons of the year so that they could get in there and sell their product, and it increased their ability to have cash flow going on throughout the winter months. And also it was a big help for improved horse health again in that situation. So all that put together, if we go to the next slide, I think it just shows that big things can happen when we all work together. And I really wanted to, my staff, most of them are out working on impacts from both the open chain and the Alameda fires right now. So unfortunately, they aren't here to be able to put some names with faces, but I would like to at least name them and tell you what they do. We have Clint Nichols on staff. He's been with us for about 7 years, and he is our forest and riparian resource conservationist. He, along with Megan Montgomery, who we just put on staff about a year ago, is our agricultural resource conservationist. And we also are fortunate enough that we have a soil and water conservation engineer by the name of Paul DiMaggio. So if you guys end up working with us, those are probably the 3 main people that would be working with you if you invite them onto their property to see what things we can help out with. They would help you develop plans. And again, it's your plan. We just help you develop it and come up with kind of some options and then work to pick out that best option. And if it's needing some engineering, whether it's doing some irrigation conversion projects on your property, again, doing some manure storage, we can pull in Paul DiMaggio to help engineer it so that it gets engineered to the level that works best for you. What I like to say is we don't want to come in and engineer an expensive Cadillac if what you really need is a Volkswagen. And that's what we can maintain once we leave, and you're there to have to continue on with the stewardship that's going on your property and the production. We want to make sure it fits with what works for you. And then we also have Jenna on staff, Jenna Sanford, that is our stewardship monitoring coordinator. And what we can do there is come on and look at beforehand and look at after and see what's working. And if for some reason it's not working and we see that, we can do what is called adaptive management. We can see that we need to make some changes, and we can come back in and work with you and try to adjust and make sure that things are working, again, both for an ecological standpoint and an economic standpoint on your property. And then we have Cora Mousseau, who's our community water resource conservationist. She can come in and actually, if you decide that you wanted to do something with stormwater on your facilities, if you want to do something with water gardens and things like that, and do some things with water catchment off of your buildings and put them into tanks so that you could use those later on, she can help out and design any of those. So all types of things that can help utilize and save water. She'd be here to help out with that. And then we have Trevor Morris, who is our natural resource technician, and he's also our office assistant. Charlie Verek, who is our education outreach coordinator. And then last but certainly not least, we have Marky Germer, who is our administrative specialist, who does her very best to try to keep me in line and keep me going on the right track. So we have a pretty good crew. We were able to increase that crew. When I first started here, it was myself and a half-time secretary. And over the last 15 years, we've been able to grow with a tax rate limit to be able to offer all these different sources of help to the communities here. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to, I believe, to Janelle, and she's going to talk about the third partner and this SIA, how she and the Applegate Partnership and Watershed Council also work to help landowners in the community.
Thank you, Randy. But before we go to Janelle, I just wanted to point out that on the Jackson SWCD website, there's this link here, which shows the total history of previous SIA work in your area and kind of highlights some of the projects that Randy just talked about.
Right. Thank you. Sorry about that.
And yeah, and so next I want to hand it over to Janelle Dunleavy. She's the Executive Director of the Applegate Partnership and Watershed Council. You want to just take a few moments to read over some of these bullets here, and then we'll have Janelle.
Hi, my name's Janelle Dunleavy. I have been the Executive Director with the Applegate Partnership and Watershed Council for the last 10 years. And we are an organization that is place-based in the Applegate watershed, the watershed that we're working in. We've been around for 25 years. We were formed originally to create resolutions out of some conflicting issues in the watershed. We've been working with partners for the last 25 years, and we have public-private partners, and we continue to do so even now. Right now we're also expanding our programs so that we're developing projects that transcend aquatic and upland species and assist landowners on both of those levels. So right now we have a number of projects that are riparian oriented. They're in-stream habitat complexity oriented, reconnecting floodplains and side channel. A lot of the projects that you saw in Randy White's presentation, we are working on similar projects. Next slide, please. So one of the major programs we are working on right now is Fish Passage, but Fish Passage is not just fish passage improvement. It has a lot of different aspects that are involved in this type of project, something that landowners in this SIA might be interested in the future. A very good example of this project is on Williams Creek, Lower Bridge Point, push-up dam and irrigation. We have removed a push-up dam and installed new fish screens and buried the irrigation water underneath the channel. So we will also be piping some of the irrigation to create improved irrigation efficiency. So Fish Passage isn't just improve it for the species in the stream, it's also improve it for the water users. Next slide. We are also heavily involved in some of the local work groups, and these work groups include riparian, fish passage, native species, which are pond turtles, lamprey, different species that are not necessarily considered game species, like some of the salmonids are, and we're involved in the cooperative weed management areas. We try to stay involved in these programs because not only does it help us maintain our level of education in these fields, but it also provides us with information from outside of our area, what is happening in those areas. So we have staff that's involved in all of these work groups, and we hope to be able to bring some expertise to the community at a local level. If anybody has any questions, we have 3 full-time staff members. Julie Seymour, she's our Fish Passage Program Manager. Nathan Garris, he's our Habitat Restoration Project Manager. And Caleb Galloway is managing our Provolt Riparian Restoration Project. And an example of some riparian restoration, easy access and in a location that's open to the public, is at the Provolt Recreation Site. We've done a lot of the Applegate and Williams Creek riparian restoration in that area. You can see an example of how riparian restoration can transform an area, removing blackberries, as Randy's photo showed, and replacing them with native species.
Okay, well, thank you, Janelle. So lastly here, I just wanted to put up our contact information here up on the screen, and thank you all for tuning in and clicking on this and checking out this presentation. I just wanted to reiterate that, you know, we're contacting you. Your property has been evaluated, and so I'm hoping that you could contact me, Ryan, at that information above or on the screen here, or contact one of your local partners that, again, the Jackson SWCD, Two Rivers SWCD, or the Applegate Partnership and Watershed Council. And I wanted to also reiterate that the Department of Agriculture, we are regulatory, where our other partners that just were mentioned are not regulatory. And so we want you to feel comfortable being able to talk to an organization about your property. But again, if you call the Department of Agriculture, if you call me, I'd be more than happy to review your property with you, go over it over Google Earth, have an online meeting and talk about the things that were identified as a potential opportunity to improve water quality. So again, I wanted to thank everybody for tuning in, and please give us a call if you have any questions or comments or would like to work with one of our partners. Thanks again, everybody. Take care.